The weight of history. Lyra stood at the observation deck of the Elysium, her luminous eyes fixed on the stars. The crew had grown accustomed to her presence, but there was still an air of mystery around her. Her movements were graceful, almost ethereal, and her voice carried a melody that seemed to resonate with the very fabric of the universe. Yarrick approached her, his footsteps soft against the metal floor. "You've been quiet," he said, standing beside her. "Is something on your mind?" Lyra turned to him, her expression a mix of sorrow and determination. "I carry the weight of my people's history, Yarrick. It is a burden I cannot share lightly. But you deserve to know the truth. The tale of the Etherians." She began to speak, her voice weaving a tapestry of images in Yarrick's mind. The Etherians were once a thriving civilization, their technology far surpassing anything humanity had ever achieved. They had mastered the art of harnessing cosmic energy, using it to power their cities and explore the farthest reaches of the galaxy. But their greatest achievement was the celestial bond, a psychic connection that allowed them to share thoughts, emotions, and memories. The bond was more than just a tool, Lyra explained. It was the essence of who we were. It united us, made us stronger. But it also made us vulnerable. The rise of the KRYTH. The KRYTH, a warlike species, saw the Etherians as a threat. They envied their power and sought to claim it for themselves. The KRYTH launched a devastating war, their ships tearing through Etherian worlds like a plague. Despite their advanced technology, the Etherians were unprepared for the KRYTH's brutality. "We fought valiantly," Lyra said, her voice trembling. "But in the end, we were no match for their sheer numbers and ruthlessness. One by one, our worlds fell. My people were slaughtered, our cities reduced to ash. I was the last, placed in stasis to await the arrival of those who could help us reclaim our legacy." The prophecy of the celestial bond. Lyra's gaze intensified as she turned to Yarrick. "There is a prophecy among my people. It speaks of a time when the celestial bond will be rekindled, not just between Etherians, but between two species. This bond will bring balance to the universe, but it will also come at a great cost." Yarrick felt a chill run down his spine. "And you believe I'm part of this prophecy?" Lyra nodded. "I felt it the moment I saw you. The spark of the celestial bond is within you, Yarrick. Together, we can fulfill the prophecy and ensure that the sacrifices of my people were not in vain." The crew's doubts. Word of Lyra's prophecy spread quickly among the crew. While some, like Mira, were fascinated by the idea, others were skeptical. Kale, ever the pragmatist, voiced his concerns during a meeting in the Elysium's briefing room. "This is all well and good," he said, crossing his arms. "But we're talking about forming a psychic bond with an alien species we know nothing about. What if this bond changes us? What if it's a trap?" Yarrick understood Kale's concerns, but he couldn't ignore the connection he felt with Lyra. "We've come this far," he said. "We owe it to ourselves, and to Lyra, to see this through. But we'll proceed with caution. No one will be forced into anything they're not comfortable with." The first bonding. Lyra proposed a test, a way to demonstrate the power of the celestial bond without fully committing to it. She and Yarrick would share a brief connection, allowing him to experience the bond firsthand. The crew gathered in the med bay, where Torrin had set up a series of monitors to track their vital signs. "Are you ready?" Lyra asked, her voice soft. Yarrick nodded, his heart pounding. "Let's do this." Lyra placed her hand on his chest, her touch warm and reassuring. As she closed her eyes, Yarrick felt a surge of energy course through him. His vision blurred, and suddenly, he was no longer in the med bay. He was standing on a vast, shimmering plain, the sky above filled with swirling galaxies. A shared vision. In this shared vision, Yarrick saw the Etherians at the height of their civilization. Their cities were breathtaking, their technology awe-inspiring. But he also felt their joy, their love, and their sorrow. He saw the war with the KRYTH, the destruction of their worlds, and the hope that had driven Lyra to endure centuries of solitude. When the vision ended, Yarrick opened his eyes, his breath ragged. "That was incredible," he said, his voice filled with wonder. Lyra smiled, her eyes glowing with pride. "You see now, Yarrick. The celestial bond is not just a connection. It is a gift, a way to share the very essence of who we are." The growing threat. As Yarrick and Lyra grew closer, the KRYTH drew nearer. The Elysium sensors detected a fleet of KRYTH ships on the edge of the star system, their movements swift and deliberate. "It was clear that they had come for Lyra. We need to prepare," Yarrick said, his voice firm. "If the KRYTH are as dangerous as Lyra says, we can't afford to take any chances." A plan of action. Lyra proposed a daring plan. Using the Elysium's technology and her own abilities, they could create a diversion, drawing the KRYTH away from the planet and giving the crew time to escape. But it would require Yarrick to fully embrace the celestial bond, something he was still unsure about. "I know this is asking a lot," Lyra said, her voice filled with urgency. "But if we are to survive, we must act as one." Yarrick looked into her eyes, seeing the determination and hope that had kept her alive for so long. "I'll do it," he said. "For you, and for the future of both our species." The bond deepens. As the crew prepared for the coming battle, Yarrick and Lyra shared another bonding session. This time, the connection was deeper, more intense. Yarrick felt Lyra's strength flowing through him, her courage bolstering his own. But he also felt her fear, her lingering doubts about whether they could truly defeat the KRYTH. "We'll face this together," Yarrick said, his voice steady. "No matter what happens, we'll face it together." Lyra nodded, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Yarrick. You have given me hope when I thought there was none." The storm approaches. As the KRYTH fleet entered the star system, the Elysium's crew braced for the coming storm. Yarrick stood on the command deck, his mind focused and his resolve unwavering. Lyra stood beside him, her presence a source of strength. "This is it," Yarrick said, his voice carrying the weight of the moment. "We fight not just for ourselves, but for the future of two worlds." The crew rallied, their doubts replaced by determination. The celestial bond had brought them together, and now, it would guide them through the darkness. The KRYTH arrival. The KRYTH fleet emerged from the void like a swarm of locusts, their ships dark and menacing, bristling with weapons. The Elysium sensors lit up with warnings as the enemy vessels closed in. Captain Yarrick Voss stood on the command deck, his eyes fixed on the holographic display. Lyra stood beside him, her presence a calming force amidst the growing tension. "They're here," Yarrick said, his voice steady. "All hands, battle stations. This is what we've been preparing for." A fragile alliance. The crew moved with precision, their training evident in every action. But beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to show. Cale Draven, the security officer, had grown increasingly suspicious of Lyra. He didn't trust her, and he wasn't afraid to voice his concerns. "This is a mistake," Cale said, his voice low but firm. "We're putting our lives in the hands of an alien who could turn on us at any moment. We need to focus on our own survival, not some ancient prophecy." Yarrick turned to Cale, his expression stern. "We've been over this, Cale. Lyra is our ally. If we don't stand together, we'll fall apart. Now, get to your post." The first strike. The KRYTH ships opened fire, their energy weapons tearing through the void. The Elysium's shields held, but just barely. Yarrick gripped the edge of the console, his mind racing. "Mira, status report." "Shields at 65%, Mira replied, her fingers flying over the console. "They're targeting our engines. If they take them out, we're dead in the water." Torin, reroute power to the engines, Yarrick ordered. We need to keep moving. Lyra's power. Lyra stepped forward, her eyes glowing with a fierce light. Let me help, she said. I can disrupt their systems, but I'll need to focus. Protect me while I do this. Yarrick nodded. Do it. We'll cover you. Lyra closed her eyes, her body radiating a soft, golden light. The crew watched in awe as she extended her hands, her mind reaching out to the KRYTH ships. The enemy vessels began to falter, their weapon systems malfunctioning. It's working, Mira exclaimed. Their shields are down. Fire at will, Yarrick commanded. The Elysium's weapons lit up the void, striking the KRYTH ships with precision. One by one, the enemy vessels were destroyed, their remains drifting aimlessly in space. A hidden betrayal. But even as the crew celebrated their victory, a shadow loomed within their ranks. Kale had been secretly communicating with the KRYTH, feeding them information about the Elysium's defenses. His distrust of Lyra had driven him to desperate measures, and now, he was ready to make his move. Captain, Kale said, his voice calm but laced with malice. We need to talk. Yarrick turned to him, his brow furrowed. What is it, Kale? We're in the middle of a battle. This battle is a distraction, Kale replied. The real threat is right here, on this ship. The confrontation. Yarrick's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? Kale drew his weapon, pointing it at Lyra. Her. She's the reason the KRYTH are here. If we hand her over, they'll leave us alone. It's the only way to survive. The crew froze, their eyes darting between Kale and Yarrick. Lyra stood her ground, her expression calm but resolute. You don't understand, Kale, she said. The KRYTH will never stop. They will destroy you, just as they destroyed my people. Enough, Yarrick shouted, stepping between Kale and Lyra. Lower your weapon, Kale. That's an order. A fractured crew. Kale hesitated, his grip tightening on his weapon. You're making a mistake, Captain. She's using you. Can't you see that? Yarrick's voice was firm. The only mistake here is yours. Lyra is our ally, and I won't let you betray her, or this crew. For a moment, the room was silent, the tension palpable. Then, with a frustrated growl, Kale lowered his weapon. You'll regret this, he said, his voice filled with venom. The aftermath. Yarrick ordered Kale to be confined to the brig, his betrayal a stark reminder of the dangers they faced. But the damage had been done. The crew was shaken, their trust in each other frayed. We can't let this divide us, Yarrick said, addressing the crew. We're stronger together. Lyra has proven her loyalty, and we need to stand by her. The KRYTH won't stop, and neither will we. A new threat. As the crew worked to repair the Elysium and prepare for the next wave of KRYTH attacks, Lyra approached Yarrick. There's something you need to know, she said, her voice grave. Yarrick turned to her, his expression concerned. What is it? The KRYTH aren't just after me, Lyra explained. They're after the celestial bond. If they capture me, they'll use it to enslave your species. We can't let that happen. Yarrick's jaw tightened. Then we'll fight. We'll do whatever it takes to stop them. The bond strengthens. As the threat of the KRYTH grew, so did the bond between Yarrick and Lyra. They spent hours together, planning their next move and sharing their thoughts and emotions. The connection was deeper now, more intimate. Yarrick could feel Lyra's strength and determination, and she, in turn, drew courage from his unwavering resolve. We're in this together, Yarrick said, his voice filled with conviction. No matter what happens, we'll face it as one. Lyra smiled, her eyes glowing with gratitude. Thank you, Yarrick. You've given me hope when I thought there was none. The storm intensifies. The KRYTH fleet regrouped, their numbers greater than before. The Elysium was outmatched, but Yarok and Lyra were determined to fight. As the enemy ships closed in, Yarok stood on the command deck, his mind focused and his resolve unwavering. "This is it," he said, his voice carrying the weight of the moment. "We fight not just for ourselves, but for the future of two worlds." The crew rallied, their doubts replaced by determination. The celestial bond had brought them together, and now, it would guide them through the darkness. The KRYTH Armada. The KRYTH fleet descended upon the Elysium like a tidal wave, their ships dark and menacing, their weapons glowing with a malevolent energy. The crew of the Elysium stood ready, their faces set with determination. Captain Yarok Voss gripped the edge of the command console, his eyes fixed on the holographic display. "This is it," he said, his voice steady. "We hold the line. No matter what happens, we fight for each other, for Lyra, and for the future of both our species." Lyra's resolve. Lyra stood beside Yarok, her luminous eyes glowing with a fierce light. "The KRYTH will not stop until they have what they want," she said. "But we will not let them take it. The celestial bond is our strength, and together, we are unstoppable." Yarok nodded, his resolve unwavering. "Let's show them what we're made of." The battle begins. The KRYTH ships opened fire, their energy weapons tearing through the void. The Elysium's shields shuddered under the onslaught, but they held. Yarok barked orders, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Mira, keep those shields up. Torin, reroute power to the weapons. We need to hit them hard and fast." The crew moved with precision, their training evident in every action. The Elysium's weapons lit up the void, striking the KRYTH ships with deadly accuracy. But the enemy was relentless, their numbers overwhelming. A desperate plan. As the battle raged, Lyra stepped forward. "I can disrupt their systems," she said. "But I'll need to focus. Protect me while I do this." Yarok nodded. "Do it. We'll cover you." Lyra closed her eyes, her body radiating a soft, golden light. The crew watched in awe as she extended her hands, her mind reaching out to the KRYTH ships. The enemy vessels began to falter, their weapon systems malfunctioning. "It's working," Mira exclaimed. "Their shields are down." "Fire at will," Yarok commanded. The Elysium's weapons lit up the void, striking the KRYTH ships with precision. One by one, the enemy vessels were destroyed, their remains drifting aimlessly in space. The KRYTH counterattack. But the KRYTH were not so easily defeated. Their flagship, a massive warship bristling with weapons, moved into position. Its energy cannons charged, preparing to deliver a devastating blow. "Incoming," Torin shouted. "That thing's going to tear us apart." Jarek's mind raced. "Lyra, can you stop it?" Lyra's eyes glowed with determination. "I can try, but it will take everything I have." The sacrifice. Yarok hesitated, his heart heavy with the weight of the decision. "Do it," he said finally. "We'll cover you." Lyra nodded, her expression resolute. She closed her eyes, her body radiating a brilliant light. The crew watched in awe as she extended her hands, her mind reaching out to the KRYTH flagship. The enemy vessel began to shudder, its systems failing. But the strain was too much. Lyra's body began to fade, her form dissolving into a cascade of light. "No," Yarok cried, reaching out to her. Lyra smiled softly, her eyes filled with love and sorrow. "Do not grieve for me, Yarok. Our bond will endure, even if I cannot. You have given me hope, and for that, I will always be grateful." And then she was gone, her light fading into the void. The final blow. With Lyra's sacrifice, the KRYTH flagship was left vulnerable. Yarok seized the opportunity, his voice filled with determination. "Fire everything we've got. Take that ship down." The Elysium's weapons lit up the void, striking the KRYTH flagship with deadly precision. The enemy vessel shuddered, its hull buckling under the onslaught. With a final, deafening explosion, the flagship was destroyed, its remains drifting aimlessly in space. The aftermath. The crew of the Elysium stood in stunned silence, the weight of Lyra's sacrifice heavy on their hearts. Yarrick fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. He could still feel her presence, faint but unmistakable, a part of her forever entwined with his soul. "We did it," Mira said softly, her voice filled with awe. "We actually did it." Yarrick nodded, his voice choked with emotion. "We did. But we couldn't have done it without Lyra. She gave everything to protect us, and we'll never forget her." A new beginning. As the Elysium limped back to Earth, its crew forever changed by what they had experienced, Yarrick knew that Lyra's sacrifice had not been in vain. The celestial bond had brought them together, and now, it would guide them into a new future. "We'll honor her memory," Yarrick said, his voice filled with determination. "We'll build a future where both our species can thrive, united by the bond she gave us." The crew nodded, their resolve unwavering. The battle for eternity had been won, but the war for the future was just beginning. The Starship Elysium. The Starship Elysium drifted silently through the vast expanse of space, its sleek silver hull reflecting the faint light of distant stars. Aboard the vessel, Captain Yarrick Voss stood on the command deck, his sharp blue eyes scanning the endless void. The Elysium was on a mission of exploration, tasked with charting uncharted regions of the galaxy and seeking out new life. But tonight, something was different. A mysterious signal. "Captain, you need to see this," called out Lieutenant Mira Khan, the ship's science officer. Her voice was tense, her fingers flying over the console as she analyzed the data. Yarrick strode over, his boots echoing on the metal floor. "What is it, Lieutenant?" he asked, peering at the screen. "We've picked up a signal," Mira replied. "It's unlike anything we've ever encountered. It's coming from a star system on the edge of the galaxy. The readings are strange." Yarrick frowned. "Strange how?" "The signal is artificial, but it's faint, as if it's been transmitting for thousands of years. And the star system, it's dying. The star is on the verge of collapse." The decision to investigate. Yarrick's mind raced. The Elysium was a science vessel, not equipped for dangerous missions. But the opportunity to discover something new, something potentially groundbreaking, was too tempting to ignore. "Set a course for the source of the signal," he ordered. "Let's see what's out there." The dying star system. As the Elysium approached the star system, the crew was met with a haunting sight. The star, once a brilliant beacon of light, was now a dim, flickering ember. Planets orbited it like ghosts, their surfaces barren and lifeless. The signal grew stronger as they neared the third planet, a desolate world scarred by deep canyons and jagged mountains. "The signal is coming from there," Mira said, pointing to a massive structure buried beneath the planet's surface. "It's some kind of ancient facility." The descent. Yarrick assembled a landing party, including Mira, Chief Engineer Torin Rahl, and Security Officer Kale Draven. As their shuttle descended through the planet's thin atmosphere, the structure came into view. It was colossal, its walls covered in intricate carvings that glowed faintly in the dim light. "This is incredible," Mira whispered as they stepped inside. "These carvings, they tell a story. A story of a civilization that once thrived here." The awakening. Deeper into the structure, they found a vast chamber. At its center stood a crystalline pod, its surface shimmering with an otherworldly light. Inside the pod was a figure, tall and elegant, with skin that seemed to shimmer like starlight. Her eyes were closed, but as they approached, they snapped open, glowing with a soft, golden light. The pod hissed open, and the figure stepped out. She was breathtakingly beautiful, her presence both alien and strangely familiar. "I am Lyra," she said, her voice echoing in their minds. "I have waited for you." The first connection. Yarrick felt a strange pull, as if Lyra's voice had awakened something deep within him. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I am the last of the Etherians," Lyra replied. "My people were destroyed long ago, but I was placed here to await the arrival of those who could help us reclaim what was lost." "Help you how?" Mira asked, her curiosity piqued. Lyra turned to Yarrick, her gaze piercing. "You carry the spark of the celestial bond," she said. "A connection that transcends time and space. Together, we can restore balance to the universe." The crew's reaction. Back aboard the Elysium, the crew was divided. Some, like Mira, were fascinated by Lyra and the potential for discovery. Others, like Kale, were wary. "We don't know anything about her or her people," Kale argued. "This could be a trap." But Yarrick felt a deep sense of purpose. He had always been driven by a desire to explore, to push the boundaries of what was possible. And now, standing before him, was the opportunity of a lifetime. "We'll proceed with caution," he said. "But we can't ignore this. Lyra may hold the key to understanding not just her people, but our place in the universe." The bond begins. As the days passed, Yarrick and Lyra grew closer. She shared stories of her people, their advanced technology, and their tragic downfall. In turn, Yarrick told her of humanity, their struggles, and their dreams. The bond between them deepened, a connection that went beyond words. But even as they grew closer, a shadow loomed on the horizon. The Kryth, the ancient enemy of the Etherians, had detected Lyra's awakening. And they were coming.